So
so hard. It was fine. It was whatever I did. They're in my notes. Like I have to go back out.
it's all good. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them. The days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. Psalms 139:16. Life has always been a marker for new beginnings. Whether we're referring to humans, animals, or plants, everything is a creation. The creation of animals and primates began, and over time we evolved to become more than just primates. We've continued to develop and learn until our knowledge grew extensively. Although it took billions of years to evolve to where we are now, evolution can now be as fast as the blink of an eye with new technology and augmentation. Since the ethical dilemma of genetic modifications on humans has surfaced, the central debate seems to be that people want to know the future of genetic modification on humans, whether genetic modification should be considered morally wrong, how the implementation of genetically modified humans will affect our society, and how we will treat this new kind of human. So that brings me to my topic, which is, what is the future of genetic modification on human life and technology, and why we should be accepting of new forms of life? So, to give you a little bit of a background, the way that genetic modification is done is using CRISPR. So CRISPR is essentially a device that's used to take out genes and kind of like insert desired genes wherever like the scientist wants to on the DNA strand. So it was first used when scientists began curing a blood disorder in non-viable embryos, and they were able to get rid of the blood disorder, but it was shut down by the National Academy of Science and Medicine due to ethical concerns. So this is a little bit how CRISPR works. This is the Cas9 enzyme up here, so it's this green thing surrounding the DNA strand. So basically how it works is it'll wrap completely around a portion of the strand, extract one strand of DNA after it's broken the DNA strand apart, and insert a new strand of DNA along this strand that is made in a lab, like in a laboratory. So this is the guide RNA, and this is actually what puts the strand into the old strand. So what is eugenics? So this is kind of the book definition of eugenics, but basically what eugenics is the regulation of reproduction due to a certain sex or race. A primary example of this would be the genocide during the Holocaust, where the Jews were kind of like killed off or sterilized simply because they were Jewish, not for any other reason. So eugenics is considered a bad practice and is actually illegal worldwide. So negative eugenics is when people aren't allowed to reproduce because they're presumed to have bad traits, and positive eugenics is when people are asked to reproduce because they have desirable traits. And both of these are considered a bad practice even though they're positive and negative. Right. So one of the primary examples of genetic modification is designer babies. So these are genetically modified embryos, and the original purpose of designer babies was to cure diseases in embryos. But recently there's been a lot of concerns that people will use this technology to create their own desired offspring with certain traits like athleticism or intelligence. And a lot of people are concerned that this will give rise to a sort of master race, or humans that are more evolved than us. So, how is this being done? It seems like a lot of these things would be illegal, like designer babies, creating your own offspring. It seems like that wouldn't be allowed. Well, it's technically not allowed. So, the National Academy of Science and Medicine holds a conference every year, usually around April or May, where scientists from all over the world, from public institutions, have to come present their case on why they should be allowed to do genetic research or germline engineering in embryos. But this is solely for the public institutions, because they have to receive funding from the National Academy of Science and Health. But for private institutions, they don't have to go through this process because they already have their own funding. Most of them are family-owned or privately funded by donors, so they can kind of do whatever research they want with and bypass all the laws. So, new forms of life and how they will affect our society and how will they be treated. So, to give an example, in our past we've discriminated against people because of race or gender or orientation. And I think as we move forward, we can learn from our mistakes, and I don't think we necessarily have to all be accepting of these new kinds of life. I don't think you necessarily have to be supportive of it, but I think we do need to accept it because it's, at this point, because of public and private institutions and kind of that private institutions have free reign, it's going to happen. Like, we're going to have genetically modified offspring. So I think we're past the point of being able to prevent it, even if we wanted to. So I think the next step for us is accepting it in our society. So, human augmentation. This is a little bit different than germline engineering. This is the altering of a human that's already been produced or already has its genetic makeup. So this would be, for example, like the replacing of a brain with a synthetic brain. And this is newer than genetic engineering. So genetic engineering has been going on kind of since the 90s when gene therapy first started. But this is the newest form of nanotechnology that a lot of people are concerned will take away what makes us truly human. So, to move on with the discussion, what makes us human, I'm going to use an analogy of something that we might be able to relate to a little bit more, which is what makes us human compared to GMOs. So, this right here is a normal plant embryo, and this is a genetically modified plant embryo. As stated, a genetically modified plant embryo is the result of recombinant DNA from biotechnological procedures that allow the genetic makeup of a food organism to be altered in some way. So I actually worked in a lab over the summer, and this was one of the plants that we created, and this is a normal plant embryo. So, to give you kind of an idea of how we should treat genetically modified humans, this genetically modified plant requires water, sunlight, food, all the normal things that we would require, and all the normal things that a normal plant embryo would require. So, although it may be genetically different, it still requires the same care and attention that the normal plant embryo does. So, the dangers of gene regulating. So, two examples of gene regulating that can be damaging is hybrids and chimeras and social sexing. So, as stated in the article, Animal-Human Hybrids Spark Controversy by Marianne Mott, scientists have begun blurring the line between human and animal by producing chimeras, a hybrid creature that's part human and part animal. And another danger of gene editing is social sexing. And according to the place of social sexing in medicine and science, published in the book Human Reproduction in 2002, social sexing is when embryos are not selected because their development is compromised, or because if they do develop, they will sooner or later be affected by severe disease, but it is solely because of their sex. So this is done often in China, where they feel that boys are preferred over girls. So this is just a picture from the National Academy of Science and Medicine meeting in April. And to conclude, although germline engineering and human modification initially seems a long way down the road, we have already developed the tools needed to create new beings that we have no experience with before. Our future will depend on how we proceed in genetic modifications we create. And if we do create new life forms, we have to be prepared to deal with the outcome of our choices. So after all, these new humans will be our creations, and they will deserve rights and respect as well. We must ensure that we can live harmoniously together with these genetically modified humans and help our world continue to evolve into a better and brighter future.